what is going to make us change in the way that we need to? Is it going to take a catastrophe to motivate us to change in the way that we need to change?
I think what has motivated us so far has been a catastrophe. It was Hurricane Katrina. Because in Hurricane Katrina, whether or not that was influenced by climate change, and we just don't know, we got a glimpse of the future. We saw what life is going to be like for a lot of coastal communities around the world if we allow runaway climate change to go ahead and we don't restrain it. And that is unfortunately what people seem to respond to. People seem to be interested in catastrophe, almost to have a sick fascination for catastrophe, and to be prepared to wait for catastrophe to provide the moral guidance that they require. Now, because I'm an optimist and because I have a fairly optimistic view of human nature, I think we are capable of acting before we see a catastrophe. But for that to take place, it requires a tremendous effort of political campaigning by people like ourselves. And the excuses for not campaigning are really running pretty dry now. We can tell ourselves that, well, we've got busy lives and we've got jobs to hold down and all the rest of it. Well, fair enough. And I'm not asking anyone to give up their job or to give up their family life. I am asking people to give up watching TV and to use that time instead to help the voluntary campaigns which are trying to mobilize to stop runaway climate change. How could you refuse to do so? And this is the moral issue of our times. This is an emergency similar to that confronted the world with the rise of the Axis powers. And when our nations entered the war in 1939 or 1940 or 41, they did so knowing that if they didn't enter that war, the consequences would be beyond contemplation. And we're faced with a very similar situation now. The difference is that we're not asking anyone to sacrifice their lives in order to prevent that catastrophe from taking place. We're asking them to sacrifice their holidays to Thailand. We're asking them to sacrifice the big cars they have, sacrifice some of the heat which they're wasting by not insulating their houses properly. It's not a major sacrifice. It really isn't. And have we become so soft and so selfish that we can't make those tiny sacrifices in order potentially to save the lives of hundreds of millions of people? And I really hope we haven't. I don't want their deaths on my conscience. And I don't think anyone wants the deaths of those people on their conscience. But unless we are prepared to make those small sacrifices, and unless we are prepared to campaign to force governments to force us to change the way that we use energy, we will have those deaths on our conscience.